This is Feature Mine. So ditrh recently appeared on the Coast to Coast radio show with George Noory, which is a big accomplishment because this is a very popular radio show that's been around for a very long time. I believe it still appears on AM and FM radio stations across the nation. So props to ditrh for getting on that show. And I believe Mark Sargent was on that show some years ago, maybe 5 years ago or something. So yeah, it's always good to get on that show and talk about Flat Earth with George Noory and the Coast to Coast listeners. So overall, I think ditrh did an excellent job as usual, but there was a few parts in that show that I think he kind of dropped the ball on, no pun intended. So let's cover those parts real quick. So basically, this was the parts where George Noory, pretty much in the beginning of the show, was saying how he is a globe earther because he's seen thousands of pictures of the earth. And ditrh barely responded. I think he needed a strong response to that, because what happened was ditrh pretty much glossed over maybe 10 seconds worth of information about earth pictures and then kind of distracted himself and moved on to the moon, which wasn't even the subject. And how that happened was he pretty much said, well, there's really no pictures of the earth, and he didn't get into much detail about it. And then he was saying, except for the one picture that was allegedly taken on the 1972 moon missions. And then he said, well, I wasn't there for the moon missions, so I'm not going to even get into that. So he kind of shifted into talking about the moon on his own without even being asked about it. Well, George Noory was specifically talking about earth pictures and how that is what's keeping him in his trance. I believe that was his opportunity for ditrh to really maybe spend a little more time on earth pictures at that point. But he really just spent maybe 5 to 10 seconds on it and, distracted himself about the moon. And it's like, no, this is the time to get into all the information about Robert Simmons and how he said that he made those pictures on his computer for NASA, and get into how that 1972 photograph shows mostly Africa. So where's the rest of the continents? There's all types of other proofs he can present and talk about how those earth pictures are not real, because that's what's keeping him in his trance. Because really, when I first started learning about flat earth, that was kind of a big deal. The earth pictures are one of the biggest deals. Now, ditrh then shifted to talking about how water lays flat and how we can see long distances with long distance observations and stuff like that, which is excellent information. But if George Noory is so convinced about those earth pictures, he's not gonna move from that until you snap him out of that. So you can say all the incredible information you want at that point. If he still believes in those earth pictures, there's nothing you can say that's going to convince him about flat earth, because his mind is just stuck on seeing thousands of earth pictures. So that was his time. And I'm talking about ditrh. That was his time to have shut that down, shut down any talk about earth pictures right then and there. And I don't think he did that. I don't believe he did that. He accomplished that. George Noory was even bringing it up again. He brought it up, I believe, twice in the interview. Later on in the interview, he was bringing up the earth pictures again, which shows me that it didn't resonate, which shows me ditrh didn't cover that. And every time he brought it up, I'm like, okay, here's your chance to really shut it down. And then nope, he just kind of glossed over the it's like I don't know if he realizes how important that is to get into that discussion about earth pictures, especially when the host is telling you that's what his big problem is with the globe. That's why he's in his brainwash with the globe. So that was a failed opportunity, in my opinion. It wasn't until the end of the show when a caller called in. They had a lot of callers calling in, and that's when one of the callers called in and really broke down how the earth pictures are not real. I think that caller did an excellent job. He took maybe 10, 20 seconds on it, maybe 30 seconds, and just really slammed it home when it came to the earth pictures. He said everything I was hoping that ditrh would have said. He really covered a lot. So that caller, props to that caller for really, catching that and making sure George Noory understands that those pictures are not real, because that is how you move him off of his pedestal about this globe earth, mind program. So Another point that I'd like to be critical of is about the part in the interview when George Noory brought up William Shatner and how William Shatner would be very upset with ditrh if he tried to tell him he never went to space. So George Noory was saying how kind of like it was an insult to suggest William Shatner didn't go into outer space. And ditrh said, well, William Shatner himself even said something about science fiction and science being kind of the same thing. So that isn't really the strongest response I would have had for that. I would have said something about how, well, going 60 miles up in the air, allegedly, if he even made it that far in the air, isn't necessarily impressive. You know, I mean, scientifically, they try to say that's kind of like the Kármán line where space begins or whatever, but regardless of the scientific term of the Kármán line and stuff, really 60 miles up is not super impressive. It's not really like outer space like they like you to believe, where you're floating around. That's just the effects of zero G just from, free falling. So I believe that was the time to really describe all that to George Noory, not just talk about a quote he had, really explain to him that going up 60 miles up in the air is not impressive at all. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson admitted that, so when people like to say, oh, you're jumping from outer space, it's like, no, you're not. That's just high altitude, and the vacuum of space, maybe that would have been the time to really explain how the vacuum of space doesn't really even make sense with an atmosphere and with orbit, with, a lot of things. Outer space kind of falls apart if you get into the details. So my review is going to conclude basically with how the callers called in at the end, and it was kind of cool to see how, there was some people on the fence after ditrh's presentation, and there was actually some flat earthers that actually called in. And then there was some globers that were calling in, and they just fired off a lot of bullet points. And some of those, I believe that ditrh tried his best to respond to some of those. I think he should have had kind of a stronger rebuttal to some of those callers who called in, and they were strong globe believers, and the reasons why they believed in the globe, I can't really recall right now, but they had like maybe 3 or 4 points about why they believe in the globe that was very weak and easily debunkable. And I think ditrh could have pushed back a little harder on them. I don't know, maybe he just didn't want to come off like he was being mean or something. I don't know, maybe, because like when ditrh had that debate with Professor Dave, is his name or something, people were saying Professor Dave was being too mean. So I think ditrh probably wants to avoid ever having that energy, maybe. So I don't know, I just thought he could have probably pushed back a little harder on some of those callers, or at least address their weak globe beliefs, maybe address those weak points they had a little stronger and push back a little harder on those. So other than that, like I said, ditrh did an excellent job. It might sound kind of like I'm being super critical, but these are just a few points that came up in the interview that kind of bothered me. So I had to bring it up. I mean, that's just what it is, because I was listening to the whole interview and I was pretty excited. And, I guess it's a tough job to be up there and, be on those interviews and be able to respond to everything coming at you. And, it's not like you're really super prepared. It's just kind of on the fly with some of these open discussions like that. So I understand how ditrh, he did the best he could do, I believe. And overall, like I said, he did pretty good. I'd give him like maybe a B. He did good. So don't get me wrong, like I'm just coming down on the flat earther in this video or something. I don't want to come off like that, but like I said, I just had to be critical because it did kind of bother me, some of those things I brought up. So anyways, that's about it for today. Like I said, I'll leave the link to the interview in the comment section in the description box if you want to check it out for yourself. I'll also leave links to my other channels, my social media, my Feed Your Mind store, my free email newsletters, and much more. If you would like to support this channel, please donate as little as $1 to help keep this channel online. It's very important. And plus, you're going to help me get out much more documentary style videos. if we get a bunch of new patrons, I'm going to start putting out some super good quality videos out. So it's going to take some assistance from you all out there, though. So all links are in the comment section and description box. I also have some giveaways as well down there. So thanks for tuning in. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. This has been Feed Your Mind signing off.